All right, so the Democrats, the media, they're desperately trying to whip you into a frenzy about a government shutdown. Now, they want to create a climate of fear and panic that is all based on lies. Now, let not your heart be troubled. The left, they're not telling you the truth about what is actually going to happen if at midnight tonight the government, quote, shuts down. It never really shuts down. It's all an attempt to try and use the shutdown to bludgeon, once again, President Trump and the Republicans politically, even though when you look at the facts and the truth, they have nothing to do with this. Now, Senate Democrats, led by Chuck Schumer, they're the ones to blame tonight. They are the ones who really, in reality, are putting illegal immigrants before you, the American people. DACA is in place until March. It is not that urgent. It is why it is now being called tonight the Schumer shutdown. Now, he and liberals, they own this tonight. And, of course, fake news, CNN, the whole network, well, they're taking the lead in launching a false shutdown narrative to try and smear the president and Republicans. Now, take a look. This is classic. How the OMB director, Mick Mulvaney, completely shuts down and owns Jim Acosta of the fake news network. Watch this.
How can it be the Schumer shutdown when Republicans control the White House, the House, and the Senate?
Come on, you know the answer to that as well as anybody. I mean, I have to laugh when people say that, oh, we control the House and the Senate and the White House, why can't you get this done? You know as well as anybody that it takes 60 votes in the Senate to pass an appropriations bill, right? You know that.
I know that.
Okay, so when you only have 51 votes in the Senate, then you have to have Democrat support in order to keep the government, to fund the government. So that's the answer to your question.
It seems that the whole process was blown up by the president's comments.
When Republicans tried to add a discussion about Obamacare to the funding process in 2013, we are accused by Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer of inserting a non-fiscal, a non-financial issue into the spending process in order to shut the government down. How is that not exactly what is happening today? There is no reason that you have to deal with DACA this week. There's no reason you have to deal with DACA before the end of February, the middle of February. DACA doesn't expire till March 5th. This is purely an attempt by the Senate Democrats, led by Mr. Schumer, that's why we call it the Schumer shutdown, in order to try and get a shutdown that they think this president gets blamed for.
Now, fake news is CNN's Jim Acosta. He's either lying to you or he doesn't understand that if you're in the Senate, you actually need 60 votes to break a filibuster. You paying attention, Jim? That's why it's being called the Schumer shutdown, because the Democrats, they are refusing to vote on a clean continuing resolution, which they say they always liked, and that includes funding for the CHIP program, the Children's Health Insurance Program, that they say they wanted and wanted badly. Now, don't believe any of this for a second. In this particular case, the Democrats actually care about DACA and the Dreamers, that this is what it's about. They don't even want a DACA solution. They want to run on this in 2018. They want to use it as a political weapon for these midterm elections. Now, Democrats and the media, they're also praying that this shutdown drags on for as long as possible because they want to stop, what, the Trump economy dead in its tracks, which is not going to happen. Now, President Trump, he has thankfully reversed the economic decline that we saw all 8 years under Barack Obama and the left. They can't stand watching this. Look at this. Good news for you is bad news for them. The stock market is at an all-time high. Under President Trump, the Dow Jones is having its best year since FDR was president. 2.2 million jobs now have been created. Unemployment in America, a 17-year low. Americans filing for unemployment, get this, is at a 45-year low. Good news. Americans and African Americans and Hispanic unemployment, get this, it's at an all-time low under the president's policies. And consumer confidence is near an all-time high. Also, 2 million fewer people are on food stamps today. The forgotten men and women are being remembered, finally. In other words, it is a complete, in 1 year, turnaround and the exact opposite of what we saw during the last 8 years of Obama's failed economy. They don't want to focus on this. And in addition to being exposed as total frauds and political hacks over the government shutdown, well, Democrats are also massive hypocrites, and we have the evidence. Here's what they said back in 2013 when they were trying to blame Republicans for a government shutdown. You might remember this.
I call them legislative arsonists. They're there to burn down what we should be building up in terms of investments in education and scientific research and all that it is that make our country great and competitive.
It's sort of like this. Someone goes into your house, takes your wife and children hostage, and then says, let's negotiate over the price of your house. You know, we could do the same thing on immigration. We believe strongly in immigration reform. We could say we're shutting down the government. We're not going to raise the debt ceiling until you pass immigration reform. It would be governmental chaos.
I join the American people in their disgust at what happened in terms of the shutdown of government. It's an unthinkable tactic to use in the political debate.
The hypocrisy is stunning. That's what they are doing. These people have no shame, and apparently they haven't actually figured out that most of what they say just 5 years ago is actually on videotape. And just like the media, Democrats have zero credibility on the issue. Now, for them, this is all about scare tactics and trying to convince you, the American people, that a shutdown will lead to mass suffering and apocalyptic-like circumstances. Those are all lies they've been telling all week. Now, the OMB director, Mick Mulvaney, explained earlier today that in 2013, and this did happen, the Obama administration, they made the shutdown as bad as possible to score cheap political points. They did hold everything hostage. And Mulvaney, he also laid out how most of the government is going to stay open if this, quote, shutdown happens in less than, 3 hours. Watch this.
The Obama administration weaponized the shutdown in 2013. What they didn't tell you was that they did not encourage agencies to use carry-forward funds, funds that they were sitting on, nor did they encourage agencies to use transfer authority. They could have made the shutdown in 2013 much less impactful. The military will still go to work. They will not get paid. Okay? The border will still be patrolled. They will not get paid. Fire folks will still be fighting the fires out west. They will not get paid. The parks will be open. People won't get paid. Fannie and Freddie will be open. The post office will be open. The TSA will be open. But again, all of these people will be working for nothing, which is simply not fair. We are going to manage the shutdown differently. We are not going to weaponize it. We're not going to try and hurt people, especially people having to work for this federal government.
We're not going to hurt people. Now, that's the truth. The government doesn't really shut down. I hope the Democrats won't inconvenience all these brave people that work on the border, the firemen. Just don't believe the media and the Democrats, their typical scare tactics, because they're not true. And very few people will tell you that. All right, on to our big top story tonight. Alarming, shocking. People will go to jail. Comparisons to KGB tactics. Well, that is how lawmakers tonight are describing the biggest scandal in American history that the media is trying to ignore. They will not be able to. Now, Sarah Carter is reporting tonight that more than 130 members have actually gone to see the explosive classified memo that shows systematic FISA abuses against the Trump campaign and an incoming president. And according to Sarah Carter, the vast majority of those members of Congress, they happen to be Republicans. In fact, only Democrats, the only ones to look at the 4-page memo, are the ones who are on the House Intelligence Committee, and only one other Democrat we know of actually took the time and went over to look at it today. And Democrats on that House committee, by the way, who are the ones that voted to keep it secret from Congress, they don't want you to see it. So what are the Democrats trying to cover up in this particular case? What are they hiding here? Who are they protecting here? And why do they want to keep it a secret? Now, tonight, we are demanding that this information be released to you, the public, because the American people, you need to know about this huge and massive abuse of power and how the Obama administration has weaponized the powerful tools of intelligence and how the Clinton bought and paid for phony Russian dossier was actually used to not only spy on the Trump campaign, but also to get a FISA warrant based on lies. So we're asking tonight that you call your members of Congress. There's the number. It's on your screen, 202-224-3121. Tell your members of Congress, release the memo. That's it. If you're on Twitter, hashtag release the memo. We're going to put the number up throughout the show tonight. Now, I know a lot of you have been writing and asking, well, why is it taking so long? We have been since March. We reported first then about this abuse, that the Trump campaign had a FISA warrant that was issued against them. That was back in March. We have been unpeeling the layers of this onion, this massive scandal, and it is so imperative. We've now gotten to this point that you need to see this information for yourself. We hope you'll call the number on your screen. Demand, just release the memo. Tell the truth to the American people, because we have a few powerful people in the intelligence community. Well, they thought they knew better than we did, than you did, about who should be the president. They abused their position. They tried to influence, steal, rig an election. Now, all that needs to happen is this. The House Intelligence Committee, they need to vote to release this information to the public. They will then send it to the White House, so I would assume would sign off on it. So in reality, with enough pressure, this could be done in a matter of days. And sources familiar with this memo, they are telling us that the contents of this memo are so severe and so shocking that it will lead to the firing of people at the highest levels of the FBI and the DOJ. Now, please keep this in mind. As we said earlier, everything that we are telling you tonight, it's only a small portion of what will be coming out throughout this year. It's going to take time. We're going to need your patience. But the first explosive evidence is now available. Think back to Watergate. Watergate was a third-rate break-in, a group of people trying to cover up, a break-in at the Watergate Hotel to get information on an opposition candidate. This scandal is about the systemic abuse of power, the weaponizing of the powerful tools of intelligence against an opposition party during an election year, and in the process shredding our Constitution, our Fourth Amendment constitutional protections against unreasonable search and seizure, all in a plot to impact and rig and steal an election. That's how important this is. And I don't care if you're a liberal, a conservative, a Republican and Democrat, you need to care about this, because we will lose our constitutional republic if we don't get to the bottom of this. And when all this information finally sees the light of day, it will remove any doubt that the special counsel, Robert Mueller, his team of partisan Democratic donors need to be disbanded, and their witch hunt needs to be shut down immediately. And as we showed you last night, these are the key players in all of this. They are high-ranking Obama, FBI, and DOJ officials, and a lot more information about them will be coming out in just the next couple of weeks. I think the latest we will get this is around January 30th, but we need to see it sooner. We also know that the Trump-hating FBI agent Peter Strzok and his FBI lawyer mistress, Lisa Page, they're at the center of everything here. And we know from the released text messages that they called then-candidate Trump an idiot, loathsome, a lonesome human being, F Trump. And there are still 9,600 text messages that we have not seen yet. And one particular message really gets to the heart of what we've been trying to find out. And this is between Peter Strzok and Page. And now it makes a lot more sense knowing what we know. Now, back in August, Strzok wrote to Lisa Page, well, I want to believe the path that you threw out for consideration in Andy's office, that there's no way he gets elected, but I'm afraid we can't take that risk. It's like an insurance policy in the unlikely event that you die before you're 40. Now, we, of course, believe that was Andy McCabe, the FBI director, of course, Andrew McCabe. And we also are believing tonight, and we have very strong evidence to corroborate this, that Lisa Page was the key counsel for McCabe. You see the nexus here? You got Lisa Page, you got Peter Strzok, you got Andrew McCabe. What's the insurance policy? Talking about an insurance policy in case Donald Trump wins the election and Hillary loses. And at the same time, then you have the Obama administration. They're trying to obtain a FISA warrant to spy on the Trump campaign. And they say, allegedly, it's about Carter Page, but we know it's a pretext. And sources are telling us that the first request for the warrant was rejected. They said no, which rarely happens. And that's when the Clinton bought and paid for phony Russian propaganda dossier was then used. Now, that dossier put the request over the top. Then they were granted the FISA warrant, and that allowed the Obama administration to begin the systemic abuse of FISA spying powers to target a candidate, an opposing candidate, an opposition party in an election. And this is part of the important Fusion GPS. Now, co-founder Glenn Simpson. Now, he testified. This was released yesterday. He didn't even bother to verify what was in the dossier. He just trusted the person he's paying, British spy Christopher Steele, even though Steele is known to have paid Russians for information. And by the way, his very skilled nature is what? His skill is deception. And we're learning from the Simpson testimony that the Clinton campaign and the DNC knew he was reacting, in other words, and reaching out to the media outlets to try and get them to write stories about the fabricated Russian dossier. So just like we've been telling you, Clinton bought and paid for a dossier, $12 million. It was going right through one lawyer through her campaign, right through another lawyer through the DNC, which she was controlling. In it, what do we have? Russian lies, salacious lies, all in an attempt. She rigged the election against Bernie. Now she's trying to rig the election against Trump. Comey and Strzok, well, they exonerate her before an investigation. You get it? There's a lot of rigging here. I know this is a lot to absorb, but there are so many questions. We need to know who knew what, when, and where. And let me tell you this tonight. Andrew McCabe, if you're watching, you need to be fired and you need to be investigated. And by the way, so does the Trump-hating FBI agent, Peter Strzok, fired and investigated. His FBI lawyer mistress, fired and investigated. Lisa Page, gone. Demoted DOJ official Bruce Orr, who met with Fusion GPS before and after, removed, fired, and investigated. James Comey, who we know rigged, in other words, gave an exoneration before investigation, we learned today is reportedly going to teach an ethical leadership class at William and Mary. You've got to be kidding. Anyway, he needs to be investigated, and he may want to hire a lawyer instead, maybe an ethical one at that. Rod Rosenstein, you need to explain your role in all of this, and specifically if you were involved in extending this FISA warrant. And frankly, Rod Rosenstein needs to be fired. And finally tonight, Special Counsel Robert Mueller, his corrupt and biased investigation needs to be shut down once and for all. It was predicated on lies from the beginning. The country has suffered enough, and it has been unfair, inaccurate, untrue, and extremely and extraordinarily and abusively biased in their tactics and their hiring of people with questionable ethics who in the past have withheld exculpatory evidence, were overturned 9-0 in the Supreme Court. People went to jail, and that was overturned in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeal. And you only hired people that donated to Barack Obama, Hillary, and, of course, the DNC. What we are uncovering here is far worse than Watergate. People need to be held accountable, especially when you have congressmen that saw the memo, that say the memo is likely to send people to jail. This is a massive abuse of power, a major violation and a shredding of America's constitutional principles. The powerful tools of intelligence were abused by the people at the top, not the rank and file, not the FBI, agents out there working hard to protect us every day, not the people in the intelligence community that protect us every day. These were people at the top. Instead, they weaponized those tools of intelligence to spy on an opposition party, and it is why tonight we are asking you to help us and demand that this memo be released to the American people. That will begin the process, only begin it, to show the abuse that has taken place for the American people. Call the number at the bottom of your screen, and I hope you will demand to release the memo. Hashtag release the memo.